Alright, so we all know that Ninjago has been around for a long time, like 14 years now, and Ninjago started development even longer ago, and I think since we are now 3 different TV shows, 18 seasons, 2 specials, and a movie in, I thought that would be very interesting to look into how it all started and to see the development of certain things as well. And if this video does well, I will get straight to work on a part 2. So if you end up enjoying this video, consider liking it and subscribing. So let's just get straight into this. So I think the best place to start would be with some of the concept art for the original designs of the ninja. So here we have designs for 5 of the ninja. So it seems that even when they first started development, they always knew that they were going to introduce a new character to be the Green Ninja instead of the original 4. Or they just originally were going to start off with 5 ninja instead of 4. But anyway, I'm sure this was probably pretty early in the development stage because the designs are pretty plain and not up to Lego standards. And if you look at the bottom, the names are very different as well. Cole was called Jake the Moon Ninja. Lloyd was called Ben the Earth Ninja, Zane was called Willow the Storm Ninja, Kai was called Scott the Fire Ninja, and Jay was Yara the Water Ninja. This is obviously super interesting stuff. I mean, I kind of want to see what moon powers would have looked like. I guess nothing good since they scrapped it though. But yeah, these are all very interesting designs and a cool insight into what the show could have looked like. And we also have some more concept art for the Skeleton Army and Lord Garmadon as well. And I think that I actually prefer these designs compared to what they actually ended up with, except Garmadon. I just think that these designs are so badass with the spikes and stuff, which I really feel fit into the skeleton's aesthetic really well. However, I do feel that they didn't end up going with these designs because the molds may have potentially been too hard to make. We also have some more concept art for Garmadon and Samukai, and also a new character called the 5 Lords of Doom, who I have no idea who that is meant to be. I don't know, maybe it was meant to be like Doctor Doom from Marvel. But anyway, he does have a pretty cool design, and he also looks like that he may have originally meant to have been the king of the underworld instead of Garmadon. And I think that may be the case because in this image we see a very different looking Garmadon. I mean, he is fully red, nothing about him screams skeletons to me. I'm glad that this was not Garmadon's design because he just genuinely looks awful and he kind of looks like someone from Lego Dreams. I also wanted to look at some of the set concepts that they had for the pilots. So I believe this set is meant to be the Fire Temple only because it seems to have the same play feature as the set, being that the temple can split into half, but nothing else with this set resembles the Fire Temple. There is also Kai's dragon in the back and he looks a lot less cool and menacing in this set. And it also looks like Kai has a car and it just looks really odd. And the other thing that I wanted to touch on was the villain vehicle / snake thing. I have no idea what this is meant to be and it never appeared in the show or sets from my memory at least. And there was also a concept for the Garmadon's Dark Fortress set, which is a set that I would have absolutely loved to have gotten. And the concept for this set had potential to be even better. This design kept the skeleton, and I think the skeleton here looks better than it does in the original set. And also looks like this is potentially the Ferris wheel that the ninja used the Tornado of Creation to create. The other building looks alright, but it isn't anything special. And some of the colors don't really fit the vibe of this set that it should be going for. I also found a really interesting concept from the spinners, and I assumed that it was really early on because this looks nothing like the final designs. So it looks like they designed a special armor piece with some sort of hook that could connect to the spinner. And the spinner reminds me a lot of those Air Jitsu flyers. So it is cool to see that the designers may have gone back to this for inspiration for those sets. However, I am very glad that the original designs weren't made like this because I feel like these wouldn't work as well as the actual spinners. And that is now everything covered for the pilots. So let's now move on to Season 1. And of course I have to start off with looking at the Destiny's bounty. So this is an early sketch of the bounty, and it seems that they pretty much knew what they wanted the bounty to look like, because the only real difference that I can tell from first glance is that instead of the dragon head, they have just got a long pole at the front. But it doesn't seem like they settled on this design right away, because I found another image of the bounty which looks pretty different. It looks like a huge cruise ship and nothing like the bounty at all. I don't really know what they were thinking. I also found what I believe could be the first drawing of Pythor holding the map of Fangs, whatever that is supposed to be, and there is also a colorized version of it as well, which shows that Pythor was originally meant to be green, and he also had a super long tail and a bone at the end of it. I don't mind this design, but I do prefer his final design. I also found another image titled Bat Pythor, which looks super crazy and kind of cool if I'm being honest, but let's be real here. There is no way that they were going to green like this, because just the concept of a bat crossed with a snake sounds stupid and ridiculous. And the final thing to do with the serpentine I wanted to talk about is this lava snake. So obviously in season 1 there was not a lava snake tribe, but in season 11 Asphira's army were fire/lava snakes, so I just thought that was a bit interesting. Never mind, I was lying. There's one more thing regarding the serpentine that I wanted to talk about, and that is this sketch with Lord Garmadon releasing the serpentine. So obviously, we know that this didn't end up happening, and instead of Garmadon releasing the snakes, his son Lloyd did. And if we go back to the very first episode, when the ninja first go to Drumonikai village, they are told that Lord Garmadon is there, but it turns out to just be Lloyd Garmadon. And I wonder if that was an Easter egg, because Garmadon was originally going to take like Lloyd's place in the season. Okay, I promise this is the last serpentine thing I have to show, but I think this just looks super cool. So this is obviously some concept for the serpentine minifigures, and it looks like these were made late in development because they look pretty identical to the final designs, apart from these green ones. Who the hell are they? So after looking at the serpentine for so long, let's look at some season 1 sets. So in this first image, we can see some designs for the serpentine vehicles, but most of those vehicles sucked. And you all know I am only showing this image because in the background we can see Nia's Samurai X-Mech. Well, actually like 3 of them. It also looks like they have the final design built up there as well. We also have an image of the serpentine train prototype set, which I'm sure you have seen before, because as I said before, all of the serpentine sets sucked in my opinion, but this train looks really good, and it is such a shame that we never got it, especially because it seems they went pretty deep into development with it. We also have some great Devour concepts. The first one looks pretty alright, but I don't dig the colour scheme because it is very dark green. And then it seems they corrected this by adding some light green, but the Devourer definitely looks a bit unfinished. And then finally, it seems like they finished the Devourer, and correct me in the comments if I am wrong, but I think this is what the final Devourer ended up looking like. I also found some prototypes of the ninjas vehicles. One is of Cole's Tread Assault. The first prototype looks horrendous, the second one looks alright, but I'm not sure why it is red though. And then we have Zane's Ice Motorbike, which went through many different prototypes. And to end off with season 1, I have an image of Lloyd's Treehouse Lego set that unfortunately never came out. It's not great looking, but I guess it looks a little bit better compared to what I made. So we are now in season 2, and from now on we'll be going through the seasons a lot more faster from here. And let's start off with a drawing of a stone warrior that was apparently drawn all the way back in 2010, before the show even started airing. So I've got to say that this doesn't look anything like the stone warriors that we ended up getting, but I actually think that this looks like it has potential to be better than those designs. And these are some concepts for the golden mech, and they look pretty identical to the show. There are also so many different concept art for the celestial clock. They even made a diagram for it. And they also found some art for possessed Garmadon and the Overlord's dragon. Garmadon looks exactly like how he does in the show, but the dragon is similar I guess, but this one is a lot more detailed than the one in the show. And speaking of dragons, this is Lloyd's golden dragon. Yeah, I don't really like it, it is way too bright. I much prefer what we ended up getting. And the final thing for season 2 is this image of the Destiny's Bounty with a jet on the sails. I forgot what it is actually called. But anyway, I imagine that this is what they originally were going to do when they fixed the bounty at Dr. Julian's lighthouse, but from memory, they just used the ship basically as normal. Alright, now we are on to Season 3 Rebooted, and let's start off with New Ninjago City. So this is like an overview of the city, and it definitely matches the advanced tech vibe that the season was going for. But what I find most interesting about this is that it seems like there are flying roads, which I don't think ended up making the final cut, but I feel like they could have been really cool. Oh, and in the background, we can see Borg's Tower as well. And speaking of Borg's Tower, there are many arts of the actual inside of the building, so I'll just show all of these pictures now. Okay, now I wanted to show a picture of the Digital Overlord. So obviously in the show, the Digital Overlord was basically just a giant version of his minifigure, but in all black. But here he is glowing blue, and he has tentacles, which is super unique and cool. And here is a drawing of Cyrus Borg, and then this is a drawing of Cyrus Borg when he is under the Overlord's control. And now here is another drawing of the Golden Master, aka the Overlord. So obviously, he did not end up looking anything like this, but what I find most interesting is that it seems that he has the 4 golden weapons as his legs, which I think would have been super cool. And one last drawing is Zane versus the Overlord. Yes, it does look quite bad, but I wanted to include it here nonetheless. Alright, so now we have some concept for the Nindroids, and they look incredibly bad. I am so glad that we got these instead of these. But a concept that I think is better than what we got was the weapons for the Nindroids. So from memory, the Nindroids' weapons were very plain and boring, but these all look super cool and unique. And there is so much variety. And to finish off the 3rd season, let's take a look at the Technoblade concepts. And the interesting thing with these are that it looks like they were originally going to incorporate each ninja's element in some way, which I'm glad they didn't end up doing, because then these would have felt very similar to the golden weapons and the elemental blades for that matter. Never mind, I forgot. Here we have some set concepts as well. So let's quickly just go over them. So this is Kai's X1 Ninja Charger, and it looks like it took them a lot of attempts until they decided on the final version, which isn't even in this image. And here is a brick-built version of Arcturus, the spaceship. And now I just want to ask, how did we not get this? This set actually looked really nice. So Tournament of Elements is known for the sheer amount of new characters that got introduced in this season. So let's quickly go through some early drawings of these characters. So this is Skylar, and it seems she was originally going to have long hair, but there was just no way they were going to use this version of Skylar because they would not have allowed what she is wearing here in a LEGO show. And this is Jacob, the Master of Sound. He looks pretty similar to what he does in the show, except they swapped his amazing afro for a straw hat. And now we have Klaus, and yeah, he looks a little bit different, doesn't he? So it looks like here Klaus prefers to have his hair in a ponytail rather than a man bun, and he is also wearing like a robe. And this is Mr. Pale, the Master of Light, and he actually has a face here. And moving on, we have Griffin Turner, and I can't lie, he looks pretty shit here. And here is the original Elemental Master of Time. Yes, the Element of Time was going to be in the Tournament of Elements and as an individual, not two people like we say in Hands of Time. And now here is Gravis. He looks a lot more interesting compared to his final design, I'll give him that. And another unused Elemental Master is Magno, the Master of Magnetism. Yeah, firstly, this is just such a useless elemental power. It actually sort of reminds me of Geo's powers. But anyway, his design looks alright, and it also looks like he can shoot screws and stuff from his hands. And for the final character design, we have An Akondre Chen. And it looks like he has a snake as a hand, which is pretty interesting. I wonder how that might have worked. Unfortunately for this season though, there is only one set concept I could find, and that is Cole's Boulder Blaster. It looks kind of small and basic, to be honest, and something that I thought looked super interesting was this image of the ninja doing spinjitzu with Sensei Garmadon at the bottom. I just think this looks really good. And to end off season 4, here are some images of Chen's palace. And come on, don't be afraid of no ghosts, because we are now moving on to possession. To start off, this is a concept poster that I found that has what looks like to be a preliminary version of Possessed Lloyd. This version definitely makes him look more like a ghost, and I can't lie, I really like how this version still looks like Lloyd, but just corrupt. And here's another image of Possessed Lloyd, and here he actually has red eyes instead of the green eyes from the previous photo, and that I don't exactly like. And the actual outfit doesn't really look all too good either. I am sure that Possessed Lloyd wouldn't be worth the price tag he is now if this was the minifigure we got of him instead. And here we have another drawing. This time it is about air jitsu, and it looks like they knew what they wanted from the very beginning, because this looks very similar to how it does in the show. And speaking of air jitsu, this is a concept of the air jitsu flyers, which are some of my favorite Ninjago spinner things of all time, because they were just so fun to play with. It is just a shame my mum never let me play with it in the house, which meant I had to play with it in the backyard, and my stupid ass made it go over the fence and I never got it back. Anyway, back to the concept image. This is very similar to what it ended up looking like, and it looks like Lego may have been showing this off somewhere, because it looks like someone's hair is at the very bottom of the image. Also, Lego must have been very proud of the engineering efforts, because they literally wrote, "We used lots of engineering to make this. Look how smart we are, guys." Alright, now moving on to this image. I actually have no idea what this actually is. My initial thoughts were that they were designed for the ghosts, but then I realized that these were the same colors as the 4 ninja. So, could these be concepts for the rest of the ninja getting possessed as well? I don't know, but they still look very cool nonetheless. And continuing on the ghosts here, are what I believe to be Mora's henchmen. So this is the ghost archer, who I assume is actually meant to be the soul archer, and he certainly looks a bit odd, doesn't he? The outfit definitely isn't it, and his head is just black with some humongous green eyes. This just looks a lot more of a kid-friendlier version of the actual Soul Archer. And speaking of Soul Archer, this is an updated mock-up of him, and he still looks pretty bad here as well. However, he is still a lot better than his previous design. And here he looks a lot more like Possessed Lloyd, but this look just looks a bit too green for me. And probably the coolest thing for this season is the concept art for what I believe is meant to be the pre-animate. So it looks like this pre-animate is using a big fid mold, and it also looks like there is a hole in the middle of for the cursed realm as well. On the right hand, there's like a crab hand, which is a bit of an odd choice if I'm being honest. This is an interesting concept, because if the pre-animate actually looked like this, there's a chance that we would have actually gotten her in set. But ultimately, I do much prefer the actual design that we got. And before we get onto the set, I just wanted to take a quick look at that preliminary box art. So this was the original design for Lloyd's face on the box, and this does look quite cool, but of course Lloyd didn't end up looking like that, so they didn't end up going with this design. Alright, so now onto the set concepts, and first up is Zane's Titan mech. So this looks a lot smaller than the final design, and it also doesn't use as much silver as that final design either. However, I do really like the huge shuriken, and here are some more concepts of it. For some reason, there is a slightly significant amount of red in these, and the one on the left just looks ridiculous. Like, just imagine Zane rocking into battle like that. And now we are moving on to the ghost ship, which looks like a ghostified Destiny's Bounty. And I have to say, it looks pretty great. The color scheme is very nice, and I like the huge sails, but I feel like they would get in the way of the deck of the ship because they are taking up a lot of space. And speaking of space, it doesn't really look like there is much space for minifigures, but this is just a concept after all, and this set most likely didn't get made because, as I said before, it looks a lot more like the Destiny's Bounty, and in this wave, all the way back from 2015, we actually already got a bounty, so Lego probably didn't want 2 ships coming out in the same wave. And the last set is whatever this thing is. I mean, it looks alright, but I don't think many people would have brought it if they released it. And now it is time to bring on the Pirates of Skybound, and let's start off with the Pirates Captain, Ninjago. So this is a drawing of Ninjago, and there isn't really anything too interesting here, apart from the Sword of Souls, which looks more like a sword than the actual show version. And speaking of Sword of Souls, here is a drawing of Ninjago using it to trap someone, very nice. And here we have a drawing of Jay crying while looking at a picture of Nia with a huge pile of cash behind him. So I guess this is a drawing that encapsulates Jay's initial 2 wishes, where he wished to try and get Nia to go out with him. And another Jay drawing we have is of him with Nia after she died in the episode The Way Back. That's pretty much it. I just wanted to show it here. And now onto some minifigures. So these are concept designs for Skybound, Zane, Kai, and Jay. So these look kind of similar apart from the fact that these don't have an Agency logo on them. And now onto some sets. So I think this is a prototype of the shark, and I think it's called, Flintlock's plane. And I actually think this is way better because this build is just very unique because of the balls. And speaking of those balls, they make the set look kind of sus, if you know what I mean. And here's another Sky Pirate vehicle. I have no idea what this is meant to be. It just looks like a flying barrel. I can see why they never released this. And the final set for Skybound is a prototype of Jay's Elemental Dragon. So this actually looks more show accurate than the final set we got, and it also looks pretty similar to my modified version of this set that I made in this video here. This version also looks a lot smaller, so I do prefer the set that we actually got. And now it is time to look at Day of the Departed, and there wasn't really anything that looks really interesting apart from the storyboards, so let's just quickly take a look at those. And now let's take some time to look at concepts from the hands of time. So firstly, let's look at this sketch of Achronic's arrival at the Monastery of Spinjitzu from the very first episode. So firstly, this sketch doesn't look like all that much, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Not very interesting. But what I do find interesting is this concept art for the Iron of Doom. So this one obviously looks a lot more snake-like. I mean, it is literally a couple of snakes stuffed into like some sort of armor, which I guess is pretty much like how the Vermilion are. So I think the design is pretty interesting, but I do prefer the final design a lot more because it has a lot more color and it also incorporates the time blaze into it as well. And another vehicle concept we have is for the Destiny Shadows. And for the first one in this video, I believe, I actually prefer this version than the actual thing we got in the show. I do like how this is green because it is Lloyd's after all, and it does a good job at setting it apart from the Destiny's Bounty. I also really like the cannon at the top as well, but my favourite part about this is that it is a water vehicle because we have never really gotten anything like that for Ninjago, especially up until this point in the series. And speaking of the Destiny Shadows, here is a set prototype of it, and there's not too much to say here because it is pretty similar to the actual set minus a few color choices. But my favourite prototype set is this one here, which I think was meant to be representing the Vermilion's lair. And I can definitely see why this set was never made because it honestly looks kind of bad. There is no color and it doesn't really represent anything from the show, and the set just feels empty as well. And now for the final concept for this video is a prototype for a Vermilion launcher. And I don't know if this ever appeared in the sets, but I have to say, I think this would have made for a nice little set. So that was part 1 of exploring Ninjago concept art. And in the comments, let me know what you found the most interesting, and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss part 2 next week. See you later, be Ninja.